Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today we're going to be in the world of the NFL, but before I get into that, let me quickly say I've got a shout out coming up at the end of the video. So please stay tuned for that. But today we're going to be discussing the opening round of the NFL playoffs. And if it seems later than usual starting the playoffs, that's because it is. Because remember, this is the first year of a 18-week, 17-game regular season in the NFL. Usually last weekend would have been the opening round of the playoffs, but instead last weekend was the final week of the regular season. But we have playoff games today, we have playoff games tomorrow, and we even have a playoff game coming up on Monday. But before we talk about them, let me give a quick couple of notes about the NFL. The first one is the Indianapolis Colts went from the team that nobody wants to see in the playoffs to the team that nobody will see in the playoffs. Because I know I said back before the year started that I'm not sold on Carson Wentz, and that's because he's always had injury problems. But it's amazing he stayed healthier than usual this year, but he still accomplished absolutely nothing. And now the Colts are saying that they're thinking about giving up on Carson Wentz in only 1 year, only because the Colts were playing good there for a while, and then last weekend they laid an absolute egg against the Jaguars. And what made it worse is the Colts fans showed up wearing clown costumes and clown makeup and things like that, making fun of the Jaguars, and then they go out there and get embarrassed. So they missed the playoffs. And also, nobody in the history of the world has ever texted anybody about a Cincinnati Bengals playoff win, because the Cincinnati Bengals have not won a playoff game since 1991, and the first text message that was sent out in 1992. So nobody has ever talked about a Bengals playoff win via a text message. And the last NFL note I think is pretty humorous. It said that the Minnesota Vikings hate the Green Bay Packers so much that they refuse to win the Super Bowl because they refuse to lift the Lombardi Trophy. I think that's pretty humorous myself. But on to the playoff games. Actually, in my honest opinion, I think every one of these games, with the exception of one, is going to be competitive. And we'll talk about that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But first, today's playoff games, we have the Raiders going up against the Bengals. And I can go ahead and tell you, it is my personal, humble opinion that if the Raiders still had John Gruden as their coach, they would not be in the playoffs. So I think they're better off without that overrated, Chucky-looking head coach that's never done anything but gets credit for being such an amazing football coach. I'm still yet to see it. And as far as the Bengals are concerned, this may be their first playoff win since 1991. But it's funny because if you're a longtime football fan, you'll know that Joe Burrow transferred from Ohio State to LSU because at Ohio State he just wasn't ready. So he couldn't see the field because he wasn't ready. So he transferred to LSU, and in 2019 he was phenomenal. And a lot of people gave him credit, but of course a lot of people also said it was because of the talent around him, which it was. But I mean, they go hand in hand. It doesn't matter how good the quarterback is. If there's no talent around the quarterback, it does you no good whatsoever. But of course LSU in 2019 had talent all over the field. So a lot of people think and still think it was based more on the talent around him and not him. But this was actually his first full season because in 2020, remember, he got hurt and pretty much missed the entire season. But everybody talks about Justin Herbert being the best young quarterback so far, but through 2 years, all Justin Herbert has done is put up all kinds of records for touchdowns and completions and yards and attempts and all that, but he doesn't win. So in my personal opinion so far, Joe Burrow has had the better young career than Justin Herbert. But of course, Justin Herbert has better numbers because they run a different offense. Plus, like I said, Burrow was pretty much injured and missed almost the entire 2020 season. That should be a good game. And also we have the Patriots and Bills coming up today. And what's funny is anytime anybody talks about this game, they'll say, well, what are they going to do in the cold weather? Well, first of all, they play in Buffalo and New England. So it doesn't matter whether they play in Buffalo or Foxborough, Massachusetts. It's going to be cold. It's cold in Buffalo and it's cold in Foxborough the entire football season. So it's not like all of a sudden now, oh my gosh, it's cold. It's always cold in Buffalo and it's always cold in Foxborough. They're used to it. It's not a big deal. But the whole weather thing to me is funny because if you follow football, you'll know that starting in week 1, when it's actually hot, it's, boy, the weather's going to play a factor today. It's hot. And on the field, it's 15 degrees hotter than it is outside. There's going to be cramps everywhere. These players are going to be so hot. What are they going to do? And then come October, it's, the wind, the rain, the snow, and all that. The players don't care about the weather. Never. They never have and never will. By the time you get to the NFL, you've played in hot weather, you've played in cold weather, you've played in rain, you've played in sleet, you've played in snow. I've seen kickers go out there in a foot of snow and kick with short pants on and short sleeves on. They're used to it. It's not a big deal. But it's so funny to me how they freak out talking about Buffalo and New England. Well, it's going to be a cold weather game. Well, duh. And the sun's going to come up too. What's the big deal? It's always cold in Buffalo and Foxborough. It's no different in January than it is in the middle of October. And coming up tomorrow, we have the one game that I think is going to be a blowout, and that is the Eagles and the Bucks. I just don't think the Eagles have near enough to hang with the Bucks. And then we have the 49ers and the Cowboys, which I think is going to be a phenomenal game. And it would not surprise me if the 49ers just beat them straight up. The Cowboys' offense was great this year, but it was inconsistent. They put up 50 one week and 15 the next week. So you just don't ever know which Cowboys offense is going to show up. And Mike McCarthy's had a lot of head-scratching moves this year as far as time management goes. So if it comes down to a late game situation, don't be surprised to see Mike McCarthy do something stupid all over again. And then also tomorrow we have the Steelers and the Chiefs. And what's funny is last week the Steelers won to keep their playoff hopes alive. And then the Sunday night game, we had the Chargers and the Raiders. And all they had to do was tie. And if they would have tied, then they both had the tiebreaker over the Steelers. So you would have had the Chargers and the Raiders make the playoffs and the Steelers not make the playoffs. And then the Chargers and the Raiders actually went to overtime, so it actually looked like they were going to tie. And then in overtime, the Raiders won the game, and a lot of people are blaming that on the Chargers head coach because of his timeout issues. But the Steelers are in the playoffs, so Big Ben gets one more chance to make some noise in the playoffs. And then Monday night, we have the Cardinals and the Rams, and I hope the Rams do something and prove me wrong because I'm sick and tired of hearing about Sean McVay being some young offensive genius. And every time I hear or listen or watch or read about the NFL, it's all these people that are just so in love with Sean McVay, and he's so good. He's a young genius, and I have yet to see it. They continue building their roster and making their roster better, but they continue to go nowhere. I just don't understand the love for Sean McVay, especially when he's supposed to be an offensive genius, and their offense to me just looks average, no better than anybody else's. And then, of course, I also read an article this week, and I wish I could remember where I read it at, but I read so many sports articles that I forget exactly where I read them and who wrote them. I just remember reading them. But I wrote an article and it said, did the Rams trade for Jared Goff 2.0? And when I read the article, I thought, well, yeah, of course they did. Anybody that thought or still thinks Matthew Stafford is better than Jared Goff is crazy. The only difference between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford is Jared Goff just throws interceptions. Matthew Stafford likes to throw pick sixes. So, hey, I guess if you're going to throw one, you might as well just give the other team a touchdown. That way, they ain't even got to drive the field. They just score and you get the ball right back. But I still don't think Matthew Stafford is any better than Jared Goff. All he does is beat crappy teams and lose to good teams. So you have Matthew Stafford, who likes to beat crappy teams and lose to good teams, and you have Sean McVay, who likes to do nothing and get credit for doing nothing on the field together going up against the Cardinals. And I hope the Cardinals beat them and the Rams just clean house and fire everybody, because whoever thinks Sean McVay is a good coach must have failed when they were a kid and bumped their head, because I have still yet to see anything Sean McVay has done. He goes out there with this exceptional roster, top to bottom, and then just flattens out every year. I just don't see it. Somebody please explain to me why we're so in love with Sean McVay. I don't give a darn if the guy's 25 or 125, how young he is. The man just flat out can't coach. So it would not surprise me at all to see the Cardinals beat the Rams coming up on Monday night. Any thoughts on any of the NFL games this weekend? Please feel free to let me know. And like I said, I think the Eagles and Bucks game is the only game that I look at and say, that's not going to be a good game. But I think the other 5 games should all be really good games. And I'm really excited about seeing the Raiders and the Bengals. That should be an offensive explosion. Should be a lot of points scored in that game. I know it's the first game today, so it's the first game of NFL opening round weekend football, but it should be the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. And I've got a shout out today. We got a subscriber yesterday. He is a former homeless man who has launched a non-profit organization to help feed others. And please go to their website and check them out. It is Sunday Dinner with a Twist.com. And once again, it was launched by a once homeless Greenville man who has launched a non-profit to help feed others. And please check them out on their website at Sunday Dinner with a Twist.com. And that is all one word. Thank you so much for subscribing. Spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family, and of course, don't forget, now that you have subscribed, if you choose to do so and comment on any video at any time, you will be eligible for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway whenever we get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Why wouldn't the sesame seed leave the casino? He was on a roll. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.